Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're going to discuss the woman who told the world the identities of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. Today's subject is Mary Katherine Goddard, and Mary Katherine Goddard is a fascinating parent of the United States. She grew up in a household where women were taught to do more than just be housewives, which was unique for the time. Her father was a physician and a local postmaster, and he passed away when she was young, but her mother took over as postmaster. Mary Katherine and her brother helped out at the postmaster job, and she learned a trade that just simply not a lot of people knew at the time. They would relocate briefly to Portsmouth, Rhode Island, where her brother opened the first newspaper in that town, and then move again shortly thereafter to Baltimore, Maryland. And this is where Mary Katherine would spend the rest of her life. Her brother started a paper called the Maryland Journal, and there they printed not just this newspaper, but also broadsides and pamphlets and this and that, and anything that needed to be printed, they would print. Now, in the build-up to the American Revolution, Parliament passed the Stamp Act and said if you're going to use a piece of paper, you need a stamp on it. And if you're in the printing business, you use a lot of paper, and they needed a lot of stamps, and this really affected them. So as with most newspapers just before the Revolution, they started printing anti-Stamp Act propaganda, and they kept at it. And Mary Katherine and her family became leaders in the Patriot movement in Maryland. Now, her brother would relocate to another city and leave the paper in the hands of Mary Katherine Goddard. Now, technically, he still owned it because a woman couldn't necessarily own a paper at that time. You know, boo, boo, those were thumbs were supposed to go down. But Mary Katherine continued to work on the paper, and she owned it for decades. Now, she also was given the position, when it opened up, as postmaster. Once the revolution broke out, she became postmaster as well. Now, when the British came to Philadelphia and the Continental Congress fled, they spent some time in Baltimore. And while they were in Baltimore, they decided they would publish the Declaration of Independence. They would get it out to as wide an audience as they possibly could. Now, there had been two publications at this point, to my understanding, the original Goddard Broadsides, and then the second one, but they were localized. They were sent to specific people. Like, for example, the Goddard Broadsides only went to George Washington and the separate states. And that was pretty much it. I think there were 20 copies, but they didn't go everywhere. And then the Matlack one was for signing. But this was the first broad publication, meant to go to the general public. And what's unique about this is when the first publications were printed, no one had signed it yet because it took a month before they decided on August 2nd to sign the Declaration. Now it was signed. And Mary Katherine Goddard was hired to do the publication because she was the best printer in town. So Mary Katherine Goddard actually printed what are known as the Goddard Broadsides, which are interesting for several reasons. First of all, they were the first ones to have the names of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. So she actually told everyone in the world, these are the guys who signed their death warrant. If you're going to hang someone, it's these guys. Now, they were okay with it. They told her to do so. Additionally, it said on the bottom, printed by Mary Katherine Goddard. So, the first copies of the Declaration of Independence made for public consumption, and the first ones that contained the names of all the signers of the Declaration, also had one female name, Mary Katherine Goddard, on the bottom. Now, does that make her a signer of the Declaration of Independence? No, of course not. But does it make her a patriot and a founder with a fascinating story? Absolutely. Because if you read it, her name's there, probably smaller at the bottom, but it's still there. So Mary Katherine, this is where her great claim to fame is, of course. She would go on, she would hold the position of postmaster for about 15 years. Unfortunately, she was relieved of her duties once the federal government came in and Samuel Osgood became postmaster, and they did kind of an overhaul of the whole system. Apparently, even though she was a woman, the people of town liked the job she did so much that the people of Baltimore actually protested and tried to get her to retain the job. Unfortunately, that didn't work. She did lose it, but she was a crafty woman and had already years earlier started another business, a store where she sold stationery and dry goods and the like while she was running her printing press. But she had retired from printing press. She was no longer postmaster, and she basically retired into running this little shop. So she stayed on their feet the rest of her life, which unfortunately some of these, we'll say not super wealthy founders, these middle to lower class founders, a lot of them end up kind of going broke. Mary Katherine Goddard did not. She lived a long and happy life. And that is the amazing story of Mary Katherine Goddard, the woman who told us all who signed the Declaration of Independence, which is great because now I get to make videos like this. I'm Jason. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit like. If you're new here, I make videos like this 5 days a week and a live video on the weekends, so please hit subscribe. I will see you tomorrow.